Hey folks, welcome back to the Edupedia world, and I am Abhinay Gupta. And again today we will continue with the discussion of one of the most important chapter, or rather I would say the most important part of your subject, right, which is the professional ethics. Right, what is the name of your subject? It is Advanced Auditing and Professional Ethics, right? So we are dealing with the second portion now, which is the professional ethics, right? And that is dealt by the Chartered Accountant Act 1949, right? Back then, just 2 years after your independence, right? So I hope the initial two videos on this chapter, right, that was useful for you and interesting as well. I'm sure it was interesting and I'm sure it was useful, otherwise you wouldn't be sitting here for the third lecture. Okay, so if that was helpful, I'll make sure, or I'll try my level best, that all the other videos and all the other lectures that are following would be of use for you. So before going on, before jumping into the the core of the chapter, that is the schedules, the parts, the clauses and stuff, we would again try to grab some basic of the chapter. So we would discuss what is your professional ethics, right? What are the kinds of ethics that we're talking about? We say, okay, you have to be ethical, all the time we talk about ethics, right? Even in standards, SA 200, we had the ethical standards separately, right? Over there we were talking about ethics. Over here we have an entire chapter from your Chartered Accountant Act talking about ethics. Now what are those specific ethics that we are talking about? What are those ethics that are relevant for you as a member of the institute? So let us see what are the fundamental principles, right, that we will see. And let me inform you beforehand that the ethics that we will be following in this chapter, well, I would call it a chapter rather. So the ethics that we will be studying about in this chapter are same that we have studied in our SA 200, right? We had the ethical standard over there. Over there we dealt with IOPCP, if you remember. You should remember, right? We have done that essay already. If any one of you have missed it, please go back. We have an entire series of essay, right? If we compare, we had IOPCP over there. That was integrity, objectivity, professional competence and due care, confidentiality and professional behavior. Is that correct? Yes. Right. Apart from that, we also saw about independence and the professional skepticism and the rest. But over here, we are not talking about the independence and the professional skepticism separately. Obviously that is the most integral part, right? We don't even consider independence to be a part of professional ethics. That is above all. You have to be independent, right? There's no substitute for independence at all in your profession, right, folks? So the fundamental principles that we will be following in this chapter, right? And you know why are we studying these fundamental principles? Because you have to understand that whenever any clause of any part of any schedule is applicable on you as a punishment, that will basically be levied if any one of these fundamental principles are compromised. I will connect it to you, right? Whenever we are doing the clauses, I'll link it to these fundamental principles over there. That okay, in this clause, this fundamental principle is compromised, and that is why you have been charged with that penalty or that punishment, right? So your fundamental principles over here are on your screen. It is integrity, objectivity, professional competence, due professional care, confidentiality, professional behavior, and the last one, technical standard. Yeah, the technical standard was not covered in your ethical standards in SA 200, but we have that. So let us see in detail what these things mean. So to start with, integrity. I don't think this is a word that I should be explaining, right? Integrity, honesty. This is one thing that has been with you since your class 11 and class 10, right? Everywhere you have been hearing or reading or writing about ethics, you have been using the word integrity over there. So basically, when we talk about integrity, then what does the Chartered Accountant Act say, right? The Act says just one single line, that you should be straightforward and you should be honest when you are performing your professional services. That is the only minimum requirement of the Act, right? And otherwise, in a layman's term, when we talk about integrity, it means we have strong moral principles with us, right? That is integrity. Okay, next we move on to objectivity. Now objectivity is one word that was very commonly used when we were referring to the SA 600 series, 600, 610, 620. Either we are dealing with another auditor, we are dealing with the expert or the internal auditor, we had to judge their objectivity. You remember whenever we had to evaluate somebody, may it be the management expert, may it be the auditor's expert, the internal auditor, we used to judge their competence, capability and objectivity. So this word objectivity was very widely used when we were referring to those standards over there. Right? So what does objectivity basically mean? So if you consider it, right, then objectivity means that you should not be biased. You should be objective with your working, that yes, this is my objective, I have to attain this is what I have to do, this is what I'm supposed to do, right, as per my engagement, as per my ethics, as per the requirements, as per my qualification, as per everything. This is what I am required to do. This is my objective, right? But if you are biased at some point of time, you compromise your objectivity, right? If you do not go ahead with fair presentation, you compromise your objectivity. If ever there is a conflict of interest, you compromise your objectivity. Right? Do not let others to influence your behavior and your work pattern. Right? No external force should be acting over you to deviate you from your objective. Right? Your objective should not be overridden. Right? So are you getting what I mean to say by objectivity? That you have an objective to attain certain goals. Right? You have been appointed to perform certain tasks. That is your objective. And you have to do it with independence, with ethical behavior. Right? You have to be true, you have to bring out the true and fair view, right? So that is your objectivity. You should not be compromising on your objectivity. You should not be biased, there should not be any influence, no interest, nothing. If you're compromising it, you would be liable to the punishments. Clear? Now if I take an example for that, now if you are a chartered accountant, right, and you have been appointed by any management for any statutory audit, and you know that you have to perform your task with diligence and professional care, right, professional behavior, but if you're not doing it, right, why? Because maybe you have an interest, maybe somebody in the management is a relative, or you have some financial interest, right? They can be anything, but these things are wrong, right? If you have an interest and you're not giving out the true and fair view, you are not what you should be, right? You are an auditor over there, you should be pinpointing things, you should be bringing out the faults, right? You have to see whether or not anything is going wrong over there. You have to rectify them. You have to help them out with things. Not the management actually, you have to help the public in general. You have to help the shareholders. But if you are biased, right, because the management is a relative, or maybe you owe some money to them and they say, okay, we'll defer it, or we'll just let it go, avoid, right? What you need to do is, you need to issue an unmodified report, and you do it. That is where you have compromised your objectivity. Next, after objectivity, you have your professional competence. Now again, this word competence, right? We have always referred to this word along with objectivity. If you refer to your SA 600, SA 500, SA 620, 610, right? Everywhere when we are judging somebody, we are judging them on the basis of their competence, capability and objectivity, right? So again, we're talking about that competence, that you should be qualified, you should have the appropriate knowledge, right? You should perform your professional service with due care. You should know how to do it, right? The diligence is a must, right? It is very important over there. Now when you have the certificate, when you are qualified, right, what does that mean? That you have been through the procedure, right? You have cleared your exams, you have undergone the trainings and stuff, the GMCS, the ITT, right? The 3 years of internship training, all these, that means, that shows that you are competent enough to perform the task for which the management has appointed you, right? Now again, if there is something coming up new after your qualification, then your competency means that you are updated with those, right? You will have to maintain your professional knowledge and your professional skill at a level which is required, right? So that you are able to perform your task appropriately and fulfill the purpose for which the management has appointed you. Right? You will have to be updated with all the notifications, all the updates, all the new laws, new budgets, new tax implications, everything. And in short, if we summarize it, then you will have to be up to date with the developments in your practice, that is the chartered accountant practice, your legislation and the techniques that you use. Right? Now for example, if you used to use the manual sampling technique, right, earlier, that yeah, we used to sanitize the dump and then we sample it this way, we try to find out this. No, now you have IDEA for sampling, right? That is an upgraded thing, that is a new thing in the market. So you should know how to use IDEA, right? You cannot still be auditing in the old orthodox way. If you are a chartered accountant, I mean obviously it's not you, But I'm talking about a chartered accountant who has qualified somewhere something about 1975, 1980, right? He has learned something different at that point of time. The accounting system was not so complex, right? The conditions were very normal. You did not have so many standards, you did not have so many requirements to be fulfilled, right? So he learned those minimum things and he used to perform it, right, soon after his qualification. But if that chartered accountant did not upgrade himself with the changing time, right, when the computers came in, if he does not know how to operate Tally, SAP, Oracle, right, if it does not know how to sanitize the dump, how to use Idea, I know it's not mandatory to do that, but you should be knowing it. If you're taking that level of client who is using SAP, then you should have the knowledge of SAP. You should be upgraded, right? Your professional competence is that you know all these things. You are able to do, you are capable of doing it, right? You are technically strong, you are technically sound, right? That calls for your professional competence. Clear? I'm just trying to explain it to you so that you understand these terms rather than just mugging up the definitions, right? Competence does not only mean that you are qualified. No, that does not count your competence. Competence means you have the knowledge, right? Capability means application of that knowledge. But when we talk about competence, it is not just a certificate, right? It is about it is about the knowledge that you have that is required, even beyond your qualification. You have to be updated. You have to know everything in the market now, right? Are you okay with it? So next we have is the due professional care. Now you have to understand what due professional care means. When we talk about taking care, right? Taking care means that you will always have to be careful when you are doing your job, right? Whatever be your task. And when we talk about being professional at it, is that you are required to perform it with the due professional care, means with a level of skill or with the level of knowledge that is commonly possessed by a practitioner of that specialty, right? That is what we mean by due professional care. That means you'll have to be due to that level. It's the level of speciality that a professional of your same competence will have, right? And when we talk about using due professional care, then we are not talking about that you being an expert in a particular field. No. But it means that in general, whatever you are doing, you will have to do it professionally, right? You apply your professionalism in it. May it be a small thing, may it be a large thing. Small thing means vouching, sampling, physical verification. These are very small things. Even at this small level of things, you will have to apply your professional care. You'll have to apply your professionalism over there. Moving on to the larger thing, assessment of risk, right? Establishment of the scope of objectives, determining the materiality. At this level also, you will again have to apply your professionalism, right? What is generally expected out of you, being a professional of that specialty. Other places also where you are evaluating samples, you are drawing samples, you are testing the result of your evaluation, you are determining your objectivity, you are checking the internal control, right? You are doing the vouching, you are doing the verification, whatever you are doing in your audit, no matter, you will always have to apply your professionalism over there. You are expected to work in that field or work with that area as another CA or another person with the same competence would generally do, right? Your speciality in that should be visible, right? Not any ordinary person could do the task the way and the professional way that you can do it. That is why you are being hired, right? So you will always have to apply your professionalism whenever you are actually undertaking any task. Any task means really any task at any level, right? So that is your due professional care. Clear with it? Understood? Next we have confidentiality. Now confidentiality is one thing that you are very aware of, right? Whenever you go to a client, you sign a letter of confirmation. You sign a confirmation where you actually declare a confidentiality, which is also known as the declaration of confidentiality, right? The declaration of independence. These are things you sign over there, right? So confidentiality basically means that whatever data you get, whatever information that you have access to should be limited to you. Because when you are going for auditing a client, you get access to each and everything in that client, right? Everything that builds up its financial statement, Yeah, we don't go beyond the financial statements, but yeah, everything that is included or that somewhere leads to building up of the financial statement, you will have the access to it. You have the access to the personal, you have the access to all the documents, all the legal deeds, everything, right? And these are actually the confidential information of the company. They don't disclose it in public, right? Only the competent people in the client, right, in that organization will have access to those information. Right? Not everybody can read the board report. Not everybody would read the feasibility report. Right? Not everybody can see the depreciation schedule. Right? Not everybody can see their forecast. Right? If at any point of time you think that no, there is a possibility of impairment of assets, what you do is you ask the management, please show me a forecast of the next 5 years. Show me what are your planning, what are your projections, right? And you understand that okay, this company is going forward. Right? There are very many price sensitive informations as well that you get access to, right? Consider yourself to be privileged to have an access to those kind of data of various entities, right? The various clients you have. But confidentiality is an integral part. You cannot share that data with anybody. Anybody means anybody, right? Unless and until you are permitted by that client. Right? If you are using the data of XYZ Limited, then if XYZ Limited himself or itself, they allow you to share the data with some specific people or some specific authority, then you can share it. Otherwise, if law demands, then nothing is over the law, right? If law demands at any point of time that you have to share the data of your client, then you have to share. Otherwise, right, if these two conditions are not existing, that means if there is no demand from the law and no permission from your client, then you cannot share the data with anybody, right? That becomes a very, very crucial professional misconduct on your end, right? Confidentiality has to be maintained prior to audit as well as during audit and after audit, right? Even prior to audit, you get a lot of information. You get you get the balance sheet, you get the information that you have asked for, which helps you to plan the audit, right? Even in that case, even in that scenario, you may have so many information that is confidential. During the audit, obviously, and at the end, after the audit is done also, there are many informations that stay with you because they are there in your working paper, and your working paper is your property, no one's else, right? So neither before the audit, nor during audit, and nor after audit, you can share the data of the client with anybody, right? You have to be very critical with that. So confidentiality, you can say, is the number one issue. You will have to maintain confidentiality, right? Moving ahead, the next in the series is the professional behavior. Now, when we talk about professional behavior, it is the behavior which is generally expected out of you being a professional. Right? When you are normally roaming in the market and nobody knows you are a chartered accountant, you can behave anyway. If you're going for shopping, you do not behave professionally with the shopkeeper. Right? You become very casual, right? You have to be like that. But when you are the client, you are working there in the capacity of the profession that you have undertaken. Right? In this context, to be very specific, you're a chartered accountant. So whenever you go out on work at any client or in your office, even when you are sitting in your own firm, you will always have to behave as if you are a chartered accountant. You will always have to behave in the capacity of a chartered accountant. Right? All the acts, all the deeds that you do, you will be judged on it. So you will always have to behave professionally. You will have to respect your profession and behave in that manner. Right? Otherwise, when you are out, you're not a chartered accountant, you're not in that capacity, you behave any way you want. But whenever you are picking up the capacity of the chartered accountant, right, you will have to behave in that manner. And if I use the text that is given by the Chartered Accountant Act, then it says that you should act in a manner which is consistent with the good reputation of the profession, right? And you should refrain from any conduct which might bring discredit to the profession. That means if you are a chartered accountant and people know you are a chartered accountant, you should not be doing any such act that would bring disrepute to the institute, that would bring disrepute to the profession, right? That people come and say, hey, I have seen chartered accountants, yeah, they are this kind of people, they do this, they do that. And others say, no, yeah, chartered accountants, they are like the man, they are the professional being. There's something about them, right? Something different, something unique about them. Oh my God, when you see a chartered accountant, his aura speaks. But then the other says, no, I have met people, they don't, I don't like them, the way they behave, man. So they say that you will have to behave professionally when you are in the capacity of a chartered accountant, right? You will have to maintain the good reputation of the profession, and you should not bring disrepute to this profession, right? And just to keep you away and just to refrain you from using any conduct which would bring disrepute or which would not be in a good frame in the capacity of a chartered accountant, the entire professional ethics has been framed. So if you are deviating from the track, if you are not professional, if you are not maintaining the repute of the profession, you would be punished. That is where professional ethics comes into play. If you are undertaking any act which is not expected out of you, you will be punished. If you are deviating, you will be punished, right? So they are trying to keep it, they are trying to bind up the things, right, and keep you restrained to that level so that you always maintain the dignity of this profession, right? Don't take it very lightly. You are chartered accountants, you are going to be chartered accountants, right? And CAs, my god, they are like damn people, right? When you use the prefix CA in front of your name, you have that repute. People look up to you, man, he's a chartered accountant, or look, she's a chartered accountant. So they have framed it, the professional behavior that you have to use, they have framed it in that context so that you know how and what you have to behave and how and what are your responsibilities when you are dealing with your clients, with third parties, with other members, that means the other fellow chartered accountants, right? The staffs over there, the employees in your office, the public in general, everybody, right? So it is the framed responsibilities that you have, and you have to follow them, you have to abide by them, right? Now the last one we have is the technical standards. Now what is technical standards? Now this is not your behavior, right? Technical standards are something that you need to follow, right? A professional accountant, that means a chartered accountant, right? As a chartered accountant, you are required to carry on the professional services that you provide in accordance with certain technical and professional standards, right? You know your your auditing standards, right? It is not a mandate that audit has to be performed as per auditing standard, but you as a member of the institute have to abide by those standards while performing your services. So they are meant for you, they are not meant for audit in general, they are meant for you, right? So you will have to abide by those standards, right? There are other standards, technical and professional, that will be applicable on you. Like for internal auditors, you have different standards of internal audit, right? So you have to abide by these standards when you are discharging your function as a chartered accountant, right? So when you are at the client, you have to maintain that kind of a relationship with the client. Whatever the client wants you to do, the purpose for which they have appointed you, you will have to do that. You will have to do that, but into the scope and limitation of the technical standards. You will not go beyond, right? If they have appointed you, does not mean whatever they ask you to do, you are going to do. No, you will have to see whether what they are asking you to do is within the scope of your integrity, is it abiding by your objectivity, right? And is it letting you be independent even after your performance of such task? Which means to say that whenever you are at the client and the client requests you or asks you to perform certain services, you will perform those services unless and until there is a compromise with your integrity, objectivity and your independence. Or in short, if there is a compromise with your professional ethics, right? Otherwise, whatever have been agreed and whatever is according to the technical and professional standards and whatever is according to the law, you can do it. And specific technical and professional standards that you have to abide by are the IFAC, the International Accounting Standard Board, the members' professional body or other regulatory board, and the relevant legislation, whichever is applicable. So these are general things that actually form the scope within which you work, right? So now are you clear with the fundamental principles that you have, that you will have to follow the concept of integrity, you will have to be honest, you will have to be straightforward, and you will have to have that moral values. Objectivity, no biasness, no conflict of interest, nothing. You have to go there at the client, you have certain duties to perform and you have certain objectives to meet. Please do not compromise your objectives. Professional competence is the qualification you have, along with you being updated with whatever is going on, with whatever new has come into your profession after you have qualified. You have to be updated with it. Then you have the due professional care. Whatever task you perform, you will have to perform it professionally, like any other good chartered accountant would have performed. Confidentiality is the key. Whatever you get from the client, whatever data, whatever information, you are not supposed to share it with anybody unless your client permits you to do that, or you are required by the law to share such information. Right? Professional behavior means behave as a chartered accountant. Right? When you are moving out, you'll have to look like a chartered accountant. You behave in such a way that would actually be consistent with what other good chartered accountants are behaving. You will have to maintain the reputation of the profession, right? And you should be sure that you are not bringing any disrepute to the profession, right? And at last, you have the technical standards that actually define the scope within which you will be performing. Those standards are binding on you. You have to follow those standards and you have to work accordingly, right? So those are the fundamental principles that govern your entire audit. And this chapter of professional ethics, right, directly depends on these fundamental principles. If there is a compromise on these principles, then you will be caught and you will be punished. No matter who you are, no matter what you do, no matter where you are. If you compromise the fundamental principles, the institute will catch you and the institute will punish you. That's a common linked dialogue, right? Forget about it. So all you need to know is later on in the chapter, right, in the next lectures that we'll be having, we will be dealing with how and what are the situations where you feel that yes, there is a compromise in this fundamental principles, and how do you deal with it? How does the institute deal with it? What are the repercussions that you will have if you compromise these fundamental principles, right? And what do we consider as compromise? Right? People are trying to be very smart these days. Let me do this, right? It's not specified anywhere. But again, somewhere or the other, the institute has generalized certain concepts, and in those general concepts, you will be caught. So over here, please stop taking the examples of your firm, your chartered accountant, that yeah, he did such thing and nobody caught him. Obviously, not all chartered accountants will be caught, but this is what has been drafted, that yes, you are not supposed to do it. If he's doing it, he's wrong, right? Being caught and being punished is not the final thing. But if you know that he is wrong, you have lost, and he has lost his reputation in your eye. Even that is a kind of a punishment for him. If he is ethically strong, right? If he doesn't care about it, no matter, but otherwise it is, right? Losing reputation is one of the hardest thing in life, right? So I hope the fundamental principles are clear with you. Now we'll take this as a base and start with the rest of the chapter, right? But since we have some time constraint, we'll pick up the other topics in the next lecture. So stay tuned for that lecture, and until then, this is Abhinay Gupta signing off. Thank you and bye-bye.